Welcome everyone at the next Multi-Network Community Sync. Today is October 28th, and I have one topic to discuss. Continue the discussion at Pod Network API. If any one of you have some other topics to bring up, please feel free to add to the notes. Otherwise, from last week, to kind of recap, we mentioned about some of the OVN and the user refined network specifications, especially the namespacing, and we defined that the array can cover that. And then we started discussing like the commonalities between the objects that we are thinking of to use. That we currently have versus what's defined today for pod network. So, and I just found in, I think the last one that's left was the OVNs one. Where was it? Let me find. I have a link, so I can give you the link, so you can copy it if you want to as well. Here it is, guy. So from here, I found an example of a network. So let me add it to maybe to this list here. Maybe that. Though this doesn't specify much of a. I have an API layer for this similarly, but stack. Let's maybe go over that for now. If we config this network. All right. So I never used it. I'm not sure. Do we have anyone from OVN can give us some rundown, or should we just go with on ourselves? But I think in the spec, what we have here, the topology that defines the two, I think they support layer 2 and layer 3. Oh, and I see layer 3. So basically there are two sections. Each kind of topology has their own set of configurations. Let me maybe see here. Let me share this. Let me see. So I am sharing a spec for it. So let's look at that. Spec. I got it to the notes as well if you want someone wants to follow. Okay, so we have network is in, no, this is, okay, network spec. So what we have topology. This is better. So we have the three types. So there is a local net. What is the local net? Topology, second fine. Well, its local topology is based on layer 2 topology, but also allows connecting to an existing physical network to provide north-south. Oh, I see. So basically, layer 2 is just a locally connected network. And then the local net is one that's basically L2, but with ability to extend towards the kind of the infrastructure. Okay. Okay, so let's see on the configs of each. Let's start from L3. So role primary network I'm assigned to every podcast in the same namespace. Oh, I see. The secondary network is on this. So I think the role basically means whether I'm automatically assigning a network to a pod or not. Right now, I think this will be boiling down to our DRA aspect. So since it defines what connects, and we didn't talk about the default kind of defaulting capabilities of attaching to any resource. I think this is some sort of feature we will have to build in DRA eventually, where okay, for this namespace I want this explicit device should be always connected to every pod. I think that's something along those lines to be done over here. So I think this is the role is kind of part of the array configuration if I've done in my mind. So we have MTU subnet. So I assume subnets is the IPAM story and dual stack cider. This is as well IPAM story. Dual stack ciders. Okay, so just one. So just to call out whether it's a dual stack or not. All right, and then here, this is cider and host. Okay, so this is just definition of for IPAM. I see. Subnet host specifies the subnet size for every node. When not set, it will be assigned automatically. Okay, so let's go back. And the dual side. So what I feel from this, I think MTU is something that we could borrow. And then last piece is the kind of IPAM story. And as I mentioned last time we met, I wonder if we should put IPAM definition into the object. This is something that, as at least as a standardized thing, right? And this
Maybe
is.
we can.
Say again.
No, I was just mentioning maybe we can just have the list of subnet that the user is requesting, and if there's a need for other like the decomposed implementation that requires like more fields, then we could have they could use this this generic parameter.
Right, exactly. So that's always a escape hatch. Exactly what you said, right? My concern with even defining a subnet, I think this is where I'm kind of on the fence. And why I'm saying this is there was, I think that was last year or that was a few years back when there was a project in the Kubernetes core to introduce some object called service cider. No, not service, apologies, cluster cider. Service cider is there. Cluster cider, which we got, there was a pushback to get it in. What it meant was that basically not everyone would use the core definition of IPAM. Basically, and every cluster, there was no standard before, so people started using various means on how to define the cluster cider. And I don't think I would want to push anything over here as well. And why I'm saying this is because even the types, if we were to have let me go back to, this is the role appeared in, let me just, even the topology itself, we can have field for it, mode, topology, whatever we name it, that's to discussion. But I would not want to enforce anyone kind of predefined sets of values. And the reason for that is there was when we started this effort, everyone has their kind of definition of what's what. And I wonder whether we should enforce that and push any type of network to anyone's implementation rather than that. or and basically leave that to everyone's implementation and discussion on how they want to do it. I think this is something for debate, because yeah, either we just enforce and be very prescriptive, or we just open up for everyone to kind of fit into their own definition of what a network is, right? What mode the network would be in, right? Anyone has a thought on this? Should that be rather prescriptive? Because though I think the layer 2, layer 3, let me get back to, I think here we know everything. Let me get back to my share this stuff. Even though at least pod network, right, with our case, we had, not here, with the Google version, we had something similar, right? And we come up with the same approach of having L2, either L2 or L3 network. And we have 2 examples that did that. I'm not sure, is that a good enough of an indicator that, yeah, let's have it. That's a question mark from me. And that, because having some of those, if we're going to be prescriptive and we explicitly call out the 2 types of networks, I think at that point we could provide some additional configuration for each of the type of a network, right? Like what UDN had, like layer 3 and its parameters, layer 2 and its parameters. That's one aspect. The other aspect is the IPAM itself. So just as I mentioned, right, there was a pushback to have a standardized ways, and not to mention, this might be limited. I would prefer to have IPAM story to be outside of this object and have yet another CRD, and maybe, I think there is a, let me see, Kubernetes cluster side. There was an object that apparently was supposed to be a repository for something like cluster cider, but I don't see it now. Maybe nothing happened with it. But what I'm saying is an IPAM story should be external to this object and basically be done by however you want to handle it, right, in terms of your implementation. Otherwise, we are putting ourselves into a IPAM definition scope, which I would not want to do, because someone might say, why for this network is it this way, not the other way? So I would want to avoid scope creep, and at least on that part. So instead of defining what is the explicit CIDR to be used, and what I'm referring to here is always what would be in the spec of the object, right? Because as I mentioned, the parameter is always escape hatch, and you can always put stuff over there if your implementation wills to do that. But I'm referring to like standardized fields, right? I would not want to enforce anyone on how the IPAM story is being done, unless basically we come up and say and decide that, yeah, let's just do that. But one common thing I see is the definition of stacks. And we I think, do I have it? No, I don't have it here, but something that we have in mind on our side as well, and in the Google object, of, do I want to have V4? Do I want to have V6? Or do I want to have both? And this is coming from even services has something similar, right? In terms of preference or definitions. And I will definitely would prefer to have something like that, of having a field for definition of which IP family I want to have on the network. or require, something along those lines, right? Require, define. So this is something that we need to kind of be how we would enforce it. But then what will mean that whether you go through in-object definition like here, right, or via some third-party object, this is when you will have to specify multiple, single, or yes, Lana.
Just we could have in the status the list of CIDRs that the pods that are attached to this network.
That's I would agree that part, yes. Status, yes.
And we don't need to specify if this is DualStack or not. So we can, it will be said in the status.
It will be inferred.
Yeah, exactly. It's stated in the status because if there's only IPv4 CIDR, then it has been configured in this way.
But then I will give you a problem to crack. What if I wanted to have DualStack, but someone forgot to give me a subnet? You see, if you do it your way, it's implicit and not explicit. So basically, I'm inferring that you want to have DualStack. What if I want to explicitly have DualStack and you forgot to give me a second family's range? How do I indicate that misconfiguration? And you see, right, the gap. And then other thing would be what else? I had some other notion. I think the main was that, right? How do I enforce and say, okay, this network is never ready because you didn't provide it to me two CIDRs, right? Two ranges for two families. So there is no prescriptive ways to do it. Oh, and the other case, what I was thinking is, what if someone adds the secondary range later on? So I have first set of pods connecting to the network with one family, and then suddenly someone adds a second one. That's another aspect. And I'm calling out all the aspects that kind of we internally kind of had to deal with. And the last one is I want to define, and I saw in the description of the, I think, subnets in UDN, what if I want to expand my range? My range, I specified, so let's say this last 16, and I ran out of IPs there. I want to add another range. I know that like for Multus, that's nothing that doesn't exist, but I would like to have that capability because that's another reason for me to put it, like for example, in our implementation, that's why it's outside of the object, because I can have ability to add more into the pool, and then being able to consume additional IPs if I need to, right? Of course, this might be tricky in terms of L2 network, but at least L3 network, where basically I don't care I just need an IP, an ID at that point for a pod, because then there is no routing in this is just based on internal routing, and that's how basically the underlying SDN handles the connectivity. So basically, I need another range that I can spit out IPs out of. So those are the two additional kind of aspects that you can see where the discussion about CIDRs and subnet can get to. And that's kind of I have a problem of having to talk about CIDRs here. So I would prefer not to have it here. Did I convinced folks about this, or I'm wrong and it's better to have it here? Thoughts?
Just if we want to change the CIDR in the fly, means that the pod will need to be reconfigured on the fly, and the array would need to support updates.
That's exactly. So there is the other aspect of mutability that's for this object. That's a fair point. Yes, and so I think this will be keep in mind. We already have such field enabled. What it means is we don't touch existing. That's kind of the current approach I am taking. And I wonder whether I think we mentioned that last time as well, that basically only the new pods cannot attach to the pod network. We don't want to suddenly go and mess around with existing ones. That's a slippery slope in terms of if you allow one thing to mutate a pod, then probably you can do more. But the question mark is, should we allow it, right? Considering the immutability of the pod spec, why would you allow now modifying anything based on this? Though I think when we so config map is already breaking that concept here. So I wonder whether we can just go and do this, but networking is more critical to the pod rather than just config map, right? It's just a bunch of variables from config map. And in terms of networking, that's like, disconnecting someone completely. So there's something that needs to be taught on whether we allow mutating existing pod around this. But in the same case goes for subnets, right? Think of, I added a CIDR. Do I go and now program some sort of routing into existing pods that attach to that pod CIDR, to the pod network? What if that's gonna break existing workloads, right? Yeah, that might be tricky to better not, I think. But of course, it might be left to the decision of the implementation of whether they want to support it or not, if they will to, but something to be considered, right? Whether we should allow it in the standard. I think this is what I'm always getting to, right? What the standard should enforce and leave things for the implementations to decide, right? This is always, we want to define what needs to be the standard, right? But that's why I'm pushing back on some of the things, because I'm not sure whether we want to get into those kind of areas and own them in some ways, right? So what are your thoughts about having the IP family indication? Just that. And not to mention, I do agree with you in terms of status. I think in our network, that's why I'm happy to do that as well. I think in our network status, we had something similar. I think it might not be this object. There was some other object, but I think having what pod CIDRs belongs to this pod network in the status is fine, right? Because then there is some automation, however you define it, whether it's in the object itself or some external object, your controller then just updates the status of the pod network to indicate, okay, those are the ranges currently assigned to this, right? And then there had to be the exact number of the specific families for the ranges based on maybe the IP families range. So basically, let's see what we discussed so far. So I think the one thing is in common. I'm not sure whether we are okay with that. Is the mode or whatever mode type, and this is question mark in terms of let's say L3, L2, right? Any other so that's one aspect, right? Then the other aspect is the IP families. Let's call required. I don't know. I'm bad at name. Doesn't matter. I think for now, and it will be IPv4, IPv6. Maybe let's do that only. IPv6 only or dual stack, right? And then lastly, we would say in status, we'll have port siders or something like that. And this is a list, let's say here, of some IPs, right? No, siders. We want to have cider one and so on and so forth, right? Let me highlight the new things. This one. This and that. So Lionel, I think, so that's what we just discussed. I would like to go back to the mode type. How do you feel about that one in regards to this thing, to the CNI to the array? What would that mean for this? Have you thought about that?
No, I was more thinking on UDN and on OVN Kubernetes and on conformant tests.
So how we would make that conformant for CNI to the array in our reference implementation? Considering we are just using CNIs, would we say that, oh, if you have L2, then you can always use, you can only use MacVLAN or Bridge or some other CNIs that we identify what are the L2s, and then for L3 some other set. Would that be so? This is where you see, if you predefine the types, you lock you lock yourself in that for other implementations. Where, for example, if we didn't predefine the types and those are open, I think the mode could be the name of the CNI you want to use, right? So mode will be MacVLAN, mode will be OVN, whatever you want to do, right? You see the difference, right? You see the kind of the problem then if we don't, because I was thinking of, yeah, we have the modes. Oh yeah, we have two places where it works, but then what we will do in our reference implementation?
I see more this MacVLAN and stuff like that in the provider maybe. Then only the provider would only provide L2 network.
So provider,
Or,
no, the provider was.
No, it will not provide. Yeah, but I mean, with the CNI driver, it's quite complex to make it fit in this.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's a good example of how to standardize, right? Because we have the two kind of prescriptive ways, right? The Google ones and ODN, but then yours is very loose, right? In terms of what it wants to be. And that's perfectly fine. And basically, this is where the spec has to kind of fit in as well, right? Because I think we can fill in the IPAM, right, story. The IPAM story would kind of work, right? Because your controller can read the blob, right? And read in the siders that are defined in the inside the CNI spec, right? You would expect some. And basically this is the only place where you would have to have it. So you would never provide readiness for a spec that didn't specify some IPAM story. And then you will read it and then populate it here. It's just a reference implementation, very basic. So I think this is fine. And basically the family definition will only specify, do you have the required set of IPAM story if you are dual stack or just single stack, right? So that part would fit. At least I see it as it would.
I think as reference implementation would be maybe better to have a very simple CNI that relies on the CNI driver for the attachment of the ports to this network. And this new CNI would implement this pod network, but it would be a very simple like implementation, because the CNI driver attach pods to networks or create the interfaces in the pods. So it's quite hard to make it fit in the pod network API.
So you're saying that we shouldn't worry about this? Is that what you're saying, that it should not be the reference implementation?
I think it's quite hard to make it as a reference implementation like this, I think.
In such
Peng, you have any opinion on this? Or
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm leaning toward like learning your opinion or not, but I think in their pod networks mode, it could be like general under CNI specific type, and like config should be like on the DRA config side. I mean, the mode should be like could be L3, L2s or any, and be mapped. I mean the CNI side or CNI DRA size. It could be like, for example, for the MAC VLAN, it can support L2s. For IP VLAN, it could support L3 and L2s in the pod networks. That is what I thought.
right, but this would still be like we would need a controller on top of the CNI driver that does this, right?
Validates it. You have to have some sort of validation that says, oh, you use MAC VLAN in the CNI config, right? So
I mean, that would translate this pod network into or resource claim or device class.
Translate? Why? What do you mean translate?
Because with this pod network, you need to transform this configuration into a CNI config.
I think I would still require in the parameters. I wouldn't go and do that part. It's just, yeah. So this is where basically, I see what you're saying. You would think that we define some of the spec stuff and then automatically auto-generate some of the CNI spec. I see. I don't think we have enough knobs in this for now, and I would not want to create so many, so that we could create that config, right? You would still have to provide it. I think it will be only part of like some probably unuseful to anyone self-validation, right? Because why would you validate whether if the mode is in a specific way? Why would I need to validate whether the CNI config is for that specific mode, right?
I'm sorry. I mean, maybe I'm not clear. I mean, I think this pod network API is not just only for the CNI DRA driver, right? I mean, the orders, for example, Google's and or the OVMs stuff are solely referred to this one. Like when the network is updated, something like that, just update this status. So yeah, what I'm just thinking is that we may not, I mean, I agree that we don't have to like define anything in the parameters stuff. This could be like if it's work with the CNI drivers, it could be the spec of the CNI. This could be there and we can read it from there. But yeah, the other case is like we maybe not needed, right?
I think the mode then could be optional field.
Yeah.
Is that what you, I think, referring to, right, Sunya?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, yeah, for the mode, it could be. I mean, even like their IP family, I'm not sure whether it should be something required or it could have some like the default values. It could be. Yeah.
So the IPAM story, I think, works. This is where the controller will be needed, and that's something that could work, right? Because the IPAM plugin, I think, is standardized in the CNI, so that's kind of straightforward to deduct right from the CNI config what is the pod CIDR that you want to use, right? Right. I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I lost the discussion. Is this you mean like, or should we have the mode field, or should we keep the mode field in parameters or something like that?
Yeah, the question is what should be the standardized fields? This is what it boils down to. What should be the more standardized fields that we should then enforce? Keep in mind, anything put in spec directly means it's something that we want to standardize on and have a definition around, right?
Okay.
So this is the exact question. What should go into spec versus what can be just left out? Because right now you see the non-highlighted items. So the field, the object looks like this.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Provider is basically the owner of the object, the implementer of the object. So I think Lionel, you mentioned this could be used as a name of the CNI. I don't think so, because this has to be called the CNI to DRA. Whatever you want to use, whatever domain name you want to use. But basically, for DRA, it will be something like CNI to DRA, I know, ref implementation dot kubernetes.io, right? And something, I don't know, networks. So this will be a domain that defines that, yeah, I am the implementer and nobody else should touch this pod network. It shouldn't identify what type of the network it is, right? This should be, that's why we would prefer to, if we want to have that, this is the mode field for that, right? And this field is to identify which controller touches the network, the object, right? For example, to update the pod CIDRs, right? I'm looking at the provider field. If I'm the provider, if my controller is the provider owner kind of the object, then I will own it and then populate it accordingly, right? That's the key for the provider field. But yeah, the question here is, what do we put in a spec right now? Those two fields are there.
Just maybe to answer this question, maybe we should define what we want exactly to do with pod network, because I mean, from the beginning, this has changed, right? We wanted to have a network acceleration story and attach like a simple MacVLAN, for example. But is this still the case with pod network, or do we aim to have like a model that GKE provide or OVN Kubernetes provide?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
If it's only OVN Kubernetes and GKE, then we can just merge both GKE network and UDN network and obtain like the final pod network that we want to see.
So why can't we have both, all of them? That's my question to you then, right?
Because we can already attach MacVLAN and this kind of networks or interfaces only via DRA. And
directly without pod network.
Right, and it's not something that UDN or GKE would like construct. They will not build anything. They would like the network is already existing. Like from my understanding, UDN and GKE are like creating the network from scratch, like an overlay network, and then you can attach the pod to it, like the primary network in Kubernetes. So if we are trying to like recreate this model to have multiple networks, then we just merge UDN and GKE networks, like object APIs.
So basically, I think what you're calling out is because those two models kind of abstract the details on how I'm connecting. I think this is what you're saying, right? The network object doesn't explicitly say, oh, I'm going to use, I don't know, MacVLAN or vietpair or other magic. So it doesn't call out the underlying implementation details, right? Neither of the two
Right.
are. It's just a high level L3 type network, L2 type network, right? Whatever is under the hood is hidden. And basically those implementations choose to be like that. Lionel, I think that's what the answer. Why can't we allow other options? Why it has to be only this way? That's the question for you then, right? As a kind of counter question. Why can't we support as well other cases?
I think pod network, one of the idea is to also support all the features that
right.
that Kubernetes provides, like services, network policies. And I don't think I have ever seen anyone using any of the CNI plugins like MacVLAN or anything to create their own cluster. They always use like some large CNI that provide all the features together that fits with their model.
I don't feel okay. That's a fair point. But there is the middle section that I was presenting in my approach, where I want to have just an administrative means to gather, or how to say that, to not gather, but administrative place to have my configuration, right? Done in administrative single spot rather than users defining those, right? I assume device class can be that, I think, okay. And can write device class can be that done for your use case, and we can have that then. Yeah, that's a fair point. So I think that's the question we need to think of. Should the CNI to the array be the reference implementation or not for this? Or should we just build something else that will implement something very simple, but will be able to later on be extended onto supporting, let's say, the services as well? I think that's the question here we want to kind of as well then answer, and then change our kind of approach, saying that the CNI to the array is the reference implementation, right? Because this is what we currently think, right? That the CNI to the array is the reference implementation for the pod network. Anyone else has some thoughts?
I was just thinking about that because I think we struggle mostly on this part, and if we take what is like existing and what is required for now, it's mostly like what are the real implementation behind. It's mostly Google Multi-Network and OVN UDN. So trying to solve this problem that we don't even really need at the end, it's quite tricky.
I see.
Or I mean,
Yeah.
we don't. It's not that we don't need it, but it's might not be the part of the scope that thing that we're trying to solve.
Fair point. All right, I think that's something to think of. I think we have to decide right now about this. Let's, I think, sleep on it for the next 2 weeks and maybe decide after. I think next week is KubeCon, is that right?
No, it's in 2 weeks.
Oh, in 2 weeks. So we're skipping in 2 weeks. So KubeCon is in 10th. I see.
And yeah, I have this. I mean, it's related to pod network, but the current API design PR. Do you think we should merge it and try to like start poking around it? I started Frozen
I
Tale
would
to-
love to, but everyone's blocking. Nobody. We don't have approvals from anyone. No, I think this is why we are. I think that the pushback was from Lionel that kind of we decided something of our own, and we don't have more contributors on this. So that's where we are. You can see it on the review. I think you're referring to this one, right? At the top. This is the multi-network.
It's the second PR. I don't know.
Right, exactly. So that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one.
I mean,
So
I
read
could
through
have-
read through the comments. Give this a read yourself as well, because I'm not sure we have. I need to kind of address those comments, by the way. But there was a lot of comments from Antonio on this, so that's where we need to address some of that aspects. Yeah, I that was my thinking, to get it merged ASAP so that we can do something, as what you said, Lionel. But yeah, we are where we are.
Because I mean, maybe the idea, okay, it's not perfect and there's a lot of comments, but I could like approve it and we merge it and we try to iterate based on it, like with multiple POCs and experimentation. Maybe because discussion, we can continue the discussion forever, but maybe.
Yeah, that's it. That was my plan, to be honest with you, Lionel, as well. But
Okay.
yeah, we need to get some of the folks from SIG Networking, some approvals from their side. I would not want this to become our own stuff only. And this is kind of, I think the key here, the API, I think I swapped it. Let me check, because this is just design. By the way, this is just the design, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's just an API. But okay, yeah, I just know that why you mentioned this, because it's like an official Kubernetes SIG network API. That's why we need to approve. Yeah, I forgot about that. Okay.
So let's have some backing on this, and basically let's not. This is what I was feeling, right? Since I had the same feeling as you, Lionel. Don't get me wrong, but I got pushed back on that one even. That okay, we are a CRD now. We are not part of core. We are doing something here. We're trying to experiment. Let us experiment in kind of an approach, right? But even that got pushed back. So yeah. Let's see. I hope things gonna change after KubeCon. There will be more discussions. Are you going, right, Lionel, as well?
Yes. Are you going?
No, I'm not. I'm not gonna be there. So I will then kind of count on you as well to push that kind of approach. Can we just merge and what you just said, right? Experiment, kind of iterate over it. It's just alpha, and I think that the idea is to put it in the X Kubernetes, so experiments domain. So I think we should be good here and go from there, right? I think that's something that let's float that idea around when you're gonna be talking with folks in KubeCon. See if that is fine, right? Because I agree with you. Yeah. Having something merged and be able to reference it properly. Like for my POC that I did, I did merge things, but to my local, and I had to reference my local branch, my local mirror, right? My fork in GitHub to do something. So that's kind of annoying, rather than have something existing right there. So there is that. I think we are almost at the time.
I think Peng and Masaru, I think, are also coming, so we can have a small multi-network group there.
Yeah, try to capture Bowie if you get or Antonio from Google site, and basically they are as well SIG network representatives in some way. So try to grab one of them as well and discuss with them. They are going to, I'm not sure Antonio, but Bowie definitely gonna be there. And he's gonna I have regular things with him, so he's fully aware of this. So you definitely can catch up on this with him. And
Yeah,
as
Antonio
well.
will be there also. So
yeah, okay, then there is that. So sync with those folks as well to kind of get them aligned on where we can further push it. All right, so I think we came to right now the conclusion is we need to think of what do we want to do as a reference implementation. So that's one question. Maybe on KubeCon, Lionel, you can answer that with folks. And then the other part is if we do want to pursue the CNI as a DRA for reference implementation, how much we want to have stuff in the spec, right? Out of this. And then what will that mean for the other implementation? And that's why I do like the CNI DRA as being in the mix, because then we don't have to think about only just those prescriptive approaches, but as well on this more open one, like the CNI to DRA, right? And how do we fit it? And what I feel is not every implementation has to support all the Kubernetes serviceability stuff, right? There is that aspect, right? It's not like it's enforced. Oh, you have a pod network, you have to then support as well services. That's not the requirement. We will not enforce that, right? And that will be part of your implementation, a kind of feature set that you do support it or you don't, right? That's the key here. Okay. So I will, for the next, let me add that as well. So this will be on 11th, and I will cancel it. Let's do this. So we're gonna meet in a month, and let's have some better decisions. Thinking hopefully KubeCon gonna give some better feedback on where we should pursue this further on, and where we should go with the CNI DRA as well. All right. Any other comments to this for now?
No, I just want to say it's very awesome work. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing.
No worries. Yeah. All right, folks. Let's meet in a month and have fun in KubeCon in Atlanta. All right. Bye.
yeah, thanks. Bye.